Are you aware of any connections between some of the research that's been going on between quantum mechanics and spirituality, about like movies like What the Bleep, basically things that are trying to prove the existence of God?
Quantum mechanical iceberg of possibility.
Quantum mechanics allows the supreme mind.
The brain is capable of millions of neural nets.
Cascade biochemical
An emotional response.
molecules.
The brain does not know the difference between what it sees in its environment and what it remembers.
We are running the holodeck.
Whatever way we observe the world around us.
So how can you continue to see the world as real if the self that is determining it to be real is intangible?
Went to chiropractic college at Life University in Atlanta, Georgia. My postgraduate training is in anatomy and physiology, neurochemistry, neurophysiology, and genetics.
I make my living as an anesthesiologist, and every day as I put my patients to sleep, I kind of wonder where they go.
My name is Michal Ledwith, and for most of my life I was a professor of theology.
I'm Dr. Daniel Monti. I'm a physician with specialty training in psychiatry and human behavior.
I actually got very interested in studying this whole topic of the brain and spirituality because it had to do with a lot of the questions that I was asking ever since I was a child.
Well, my name is Candace Pert, and I'm a professor at Georgetown in the medical school.
You're asking me how scientists can sound this wacko because I must be sounding wacko.
I should make it clear that I'm a graduate student in physics. I'm not a full-fledged theoretical physicist yet. Here we are actually filming great thinkers. Everyone in this room is a great thinker. Now that we got them thinking, that's always a trick, isn't it?
I study quantum physics. I sometimes teach it. I have written a book on quantum physics and many books explicating the meaning of quantum physics.
I presume that you're asking me how scientists can sound this wacko because I must be sounding wacko.
You bring up actually a pretty rich issue. Quantum mechanics, at least some interpretations of quantum mechanics, bear some relationship to Eastern or Buddhist thoughts, where the principal reality is actually human awareness, and that we actually create the world with our awareness, because at least according to certain interpretations of quantum mechanics, a particle actually doesn't decide where it is. It can be in many different places, but when we observe it, we resolve that quantum ambiguity, and reality actually becomes manifest as a result of observation by a conscious observer. There are other interpretations of quantum mechanics, but it's interesting that there actually is a meeting of the minds between certain schools of Eastern thought with certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. And there's also, there's been speculation by scientists such as Roger Penrose that human consciousness arises from quantum interactions that take place in our brain. People pointed out to Penrose, well, the brain is actually a pretty messy place, and the neurons are not really at the right scale for quantum events to take place, or for there to be quantum ambiguity or quantum entanglement. So he came up with a theory that the tubules, which are very fine structures within the neurons, do quantum computing. That remains controversial. We've never actually detected quantum computing inside the human brain. My own feeling is, if we look at what human beings are capable of, we don't see evidence that we're doing quantum computing, because quantum computing would be able to simultaneously consider every possible combination of solutions to a problem simultaneously. And the kinds of things that humans do seem to be explained by more classical computing. But this remains both a technical and controversial area. I would approach spirituality a little differently. I mean, I'm quite enamored with the powers of evolution. In fact, we can use evolution in a computer and actually simulate evolution, and the computer will actually evolve an intelligent solution to a problem. It's really quite amazing. We let millions of solutions compete in a simulated environment, and it comes after hundreds of generations. It actually evolves a surprising and intelligent solution to a problem. So biological evolution gave rise to a technology creating species, and evolution is actually capable of creating more complex, more intelligent entities than you started with. And then the technology creating species has ushered in this whole evolutionary process of technology. And that has enabled us to, and that is actually the cutting edge of evolution right now on Earth. I mean, biological evolution is continuing, but we are making 1,000 times faster progress with technological evolution. And ultimately, that is the way in which we're going to lift ourselves up. And what happens in an evolutionary process? Well, things get more complicated. The entities actually get more knowledgeable. They get more creative. They actually get more beautiful. They get more capable of higher level emotions like love. So they become, more knowledgeable, more creative, more beautiful, all the things that have been attributed to God in our religious traditions without limit. And an evolutionary process actually never reaches infinite levels, but it explodes exponentially, and so it seems to be becoming infinite. Literally stays finite, but it explodes in capability, moving closer to that ideal of infinite knowledge, infinite intelligence. So you could say that evolution is a spiritual process, and I believe that's the case. I mean, you asked before what is the purpose of all this, and I really see it as a spiritual process to expand knowledge. But knowledge is not just information. It's not just dry facts. Knowledge is expressions of a loving sentiment, art, music, science, the grand expressions of human civilization, and that is a spiritual quest, in my view.
One of your titles of your books is called The Age of Spiritual Machines. What do you mean by a spiritual machine?
Well, I was making two allusions. One is to this concept of spirituality that I just articulated, that an evolutionary process, starting with biology and now with technology, is actually moving towards greater levels of intelligence and therefore becoming more like God, at least moving in that spiritual direction of greater intelligence. So we could say it's a spiritual process. But there was another allusion. I mean, what do we mean when people say, well, a person has a soul? They're really referring to consciousness, the fact that I'm aware of my own existence. I'm not just aware of it, I feel it, and I feel the emotions associated with it. And these emotions are not just technical states, they're rich in meaning. And that is, so human beings, I mean, are a machine. I mean, a neuron is a collection of molecules and ion channels, and you can describe, and we are in fact describing those in very precise terms. And you put 100 billion of them together in a very specific way, and you create a human being. And a lot of people would consider a human being to be a spiritual machine. Well, we're going to be able to recreate the powers of human intelligence, all of the subtlety and suppleness of human intelligence in a machine. And therefore those machines, I mean, if human beings in fact are spiritual machines, and those machines that emulate human intelligence and have the same complexity and are based on the design of human intelligence, will share in that property. And then you ask the question, okay, well, is a machine like that conscious? Well, how can you tell? Well, let's ask the machine. Are you conscious? So the machine says, yeah, I'm conscious. Well, a machine could say that today. Do you believe it? Well, today you don't believe it. When a character in a video game says, I'm very jealous or I'm very angry at you, you don't really take it seriously because we can see the edges of its intelligence. They're not fully convincing. They don't have all the subtle cues that go along with that emotion. So we don't really believe that they're really conscious. We think they're just a software program. But the point of my thesis is that as we get out to the late 2020s, early 2030s, these machines will be so complex and so rich in their emotional reactions and so realistic in their recreations of human intelligence that when they talk about their feelings, they will have all the subtle cues, and we will be convinced by them. But ultimately, this is not a philosophical proof that they are conscious. Consciousness is a synonym for subjectivity, and science is really objectivity and rational deductions from our objective observation. And there's a gap between science, objectivity, and subjectivity. And there's really no scientific test we can postulate that we could slide an entity in and a green light comes on. Okay, this one's conscious. No, this one's not conscious. We could build a machine like that, but it would have philosophical assumptions built into it. So John Searle would make sure that it's squirting neurotransmitters, and Roger Penrose would make sure that it had something equivalent to the tubules during quantum computing, and other scientists or philosophers would make other assumptions. But there's really no objective way to absolutely answer that question. And we don't even know that other people are conscious, but we assume that. But actually, when we go outside of shared human experience, talk about, for example, animals, we're not sure, or at least we disagree. And we'll have disagreements about these machines.